Welcome to the Weather Review, the podcast that is not your typical forecast. Weekly, we look back at weather events that may have made the news in an attempt to explain what happened and why. I'm your host, Gavin White, and I welcome you to this week's Weather Review. While it was a relatively quieter week in the weather world, the climate world, on the other hand, has had quite the hectic week. According to many news publications, including the Associated Press, Earth achieved the hottest temperatures on record 3 days in a row this past week. Now, on instinct, that should raise some concerns within you, should raise some red flags. We know global warming is occurring, but is it really accelerating this quickly? Are records really being this broken globally? Except there's one problem when you consider all this, is that they, being the AP, are referencing unofficial observations. Now, to the credit of the AP, yes, they explain in the article, but more importantly, they include in the headline that it was an unofficial heat record. However, many of the other local news stations that used AP as their source for the article seem to omit that. For example, an NBC station, NBC local station, one headline is Earth's hottest day record reset 3 times this week. It's a little bit stretching the truth. A Forbes article, current climate, the hottest day on Earth. Texas A&M Today, what's causing Earth's hottest days to date? Washington Post, Earth is at its hottest in thousands of years. And those are all very misleading headlines, especially compared to the AP's, which included the fact that this is an unofficial record. So why is it such a big deal? Well, while record daily temperatures are kept for towns, counties, cities, and countries, no such record is actually in place globally. It's too big of a place and there's too much variability to maintain fully accurate global average temperatures day by day. Now, we keep it monthly and we keep it annually, and that's what we base our climate records off of. That's what makes up the official climate records, our monthly and annual means. However, we don't do that daily just because there's too much variability in the day-to-day measurements. And that's what we're going to be discussing today, is where all this talk regarding the climate came from this week and these unofficial heat records, global heat records, and why it's been such a big deal, and kind of explaining the context surrounding these record warming headlines, and the stretching of the truth that many of these news articles are containing. And where's all this coming from, this global average record warm temperature? Well, all this hype is being generated from the University of Maine's Climate Reanalyzer, which was launched in 2012. And essentially, this is a data visualization tool. It's used to provide a snapshot of the globe. It in itself is not a model. It actually is a visualization of estimated average temperatures from a compilation of models. So pretty much that is it's this tool, this Climate Reanalyzer from the University of Maine. It's a way to visualize a quick snapshot based off the current daily estimations from reputable climate models. It's important to know these are estimations. These are not observations. There is a difference. So the news articles that I guarantee you've seen this last week, that the AP wrote, that all these other local stations wrote, that's blowing up on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, everything. All these news articles, they're referencing the daily 2-meter air temperature, which is one of the many tools that this Climate Reanalyzer provided by this visualizer. And it's pretty much an average of all global modeled temperature readings. Again, these are estimations. These aren't the fully observed measurements. The observed measurements are going to vary based on the weather station, based off the country, based off the town. Everything's going to be different. There's going to be a lot more variability if you're looking at the actual observed data. You're not going to have the observed data for every square inch of the globe. That's not possible, which is why it's estimated. So this daily 2-meter air temperature, it shows area-weighted daily means calculated from the Climate Forecast System, which is part of NOAA's National Center for Environmental Protection. It's one of their models. It's a model of interactions between oceans, land, and atmosphere. It provides hourly data with a spatial resolution of half a degree, which is approximately 56 kilometers. So this model is taking in actual observations and taking in historical context, which it has. I believe this model has data running back to like the mid 1800s, and it's taking in all this information. It spits out every hour data on a whole slew of different topics pertaining to the climate, one of which is the daily 2-meter air temperature. Now, of course, this is an estimation from this model. It's a very reliable model, and it's relatively accurate. I mean, most of these things are going to be accurate to within half a degree Celsius, give or take. So the numbers it's spitting out are going to be relatively accurate if it were possible to record the temperature on every single square inch of the globe and average it. It's going to be very similar to what the model is pointing out, except it's an estimation. It's not the actual observed temperature, which is why there's a lot of confusion surrounding this, a lot of questioning surrounding all of the headlines and then the need for these headlines that have come out. And so the visualizer from the University of Maine, it visualizes these modeled temperature anomalies. So the modeled temperature for the day compared to the historical average from the last 30 years. So it takes this modeled daily temperature, compares it to the climatological average from the last 30 years, and it measures and graphs the anomalies. So it puts it in an easy-to-interpret graph, which makes it very easy to take it out of context and makes it very easy for headlines to warp the data to fit what they're trying to say, and it makes it very easy for social media to warp it to fit what they're trying to say. And just there's a whole lot that comes from this. It's a great tool to have because it gives you a good snapshot of the globe. You just shouldn't take it as raw data because it's not raw data. In fact, it's actually interesting that these all these headlines that have come out regarding this, it prompted the website, the visualizer, to add a special notice on the website reminding users that its data is not official observations. It's a visualization of modeled estimations. I keep emphasizing that because it's incredibly important to know the difference between those. So when we're comparing these unofficial records, so let me take a step back. So what these estimations do is it was the highest estimated global average temperature on record, and this record only lasts about 42 years, I think, is how long this estimated record is. So this drew a lot of attention because it was the highest ever for this particular set of data, and the set of data is estimations, estimated data, and that's what everyone is making a big deal about, is this estimated data. Now, of course, it is cause for concern. Not completely blown out of the water. Yes, the planet is warming. It's warming at a rate higher than it should be for a variety of factors. In part human fossil fuel consumption, in part natural oscillations in the Earth's temperature. But the temperature is rising at a rate higher than typical, higher than we've seen in the past, which is a valid concern to have, valid reason to be concerned. And so you can see why so many people would jump on this. There's just a lot of obsession with the climate and climate change, especially in recent years. So whenever there's some sort of quote-unquote record-breaking event that takes place, people are going to jump on it, people are going to draw attention to it, and that's what happened here, except for the fact that this wasn't actual observed data, it was estimated. Now, it's very well possible that in the 250 years or so of reputable climate data that we have, this is very possible that we could have truly just had the warmest day on record. But we're not going to have those observations until the month is up. We're at the start of the month. We're not going to know for certain until the end of the month. And so that leads me to what the official records actually are. So NOAA releases monthly and annual records for both the U.S. and the globe. And their records it's part of what they call NOAA Global Temp. That's the model name, essentially. And this particular model is considered the official climate records. These are the actual records. These are not estimations. These are the most precisely calculated observations. Now, of course, it's controlled to rule out any technical issues that may arise, any human errors that may arise in particular measurements somewhere in the globe, and it creates the global average temperature. And they use that when they release their monthly and annual reports to kind of give us an actual, more official record as to what's going on in the climate as a whole. Of course, we did just recently, within the last few weeks, the monthly report for the month of May came out, and I believe it was the third warmest May on record. And those are official climate records. Those aren't estimations. Those are the official, the most accurately calculated observations that we can obtain today. And this is a history of roughly a little under 200 years, dating back to the mid 1800s is how far back our reliable instrumental data goes. So we know, yes, the planet is warming, And yes, we're in a period in which we have the warmest temperatures in the instrumental period, reliable instrumental period. But the reason why I chose this as the topic this week is just because it's just a lot of, you always hear misinformation, disinformation, climate misinformation. This is kind of climate misinformation. All these news agencies referencing something that is not an official record, they're referencing something that's an unofficial estimation of what is going on with the climate. So it already calls into question the very claim they're making that, doomsday is right around the corner, which is not entirely true. And so I know I'm kind of walking a thin line right here because I'm not denying climate change. It's a very real phenomenon that we need to be cautious of. However, it's important that we, when I say we, the news in particular, reports it accurately and without agendas behind it. So one thing that keeps news in business is ratings if it's television, and minutes if it's not. Minutes if it's online, if it's digital. People reading your articles, people watching your shows. And the best way to do that is to create a constant state of fear. How do you do that? What's the thing most people are obsessed with in this day and age? It's climate change. So anytime something looks bad for the climate, you can take something out of context to draw fear for it. People are going to jump on it. You're going to make things seem worse than they are. Yes, the climate is not in a good state, in a large part due to humans. Not entirely, by all means, but the climate is warmer. Again, I'm not saying that, I'm not going to get into the ethics behind it, or the ethics or the economics or the morals behind it. That's a different conversation that I'm not having. The argument I'm trying to make is they need to give more context for what they're talking about, the news. When they're referencing these climate records being broken, yes, the AP, I will give the AP credit. They did a good job of pointing out, hey, these are unofficial records. Keep that in mind while you're reading our article. Other places, other news agencies did not do that. They made sure to omit that. So that's what makes it difficult when you're fighting true climate disinformation. It's really taking things out of context, as is the case with this. We don't know for certain if we just had the hottest day on record. There's a good chance we might have, but there's no way to know it 100% for certain because this is based on estimations, not observations. Monthly and annual data, which is the part of the official record, those are based on actual observations rather than estimations. So now that I've gotten that little spiel out of my system, we did just have one of the warmest Mays on record, and the June monthly report's coming out here in the next couple days, which is also expected to be one of the warmest on record. So what's behind this warm period that we are experiencing now? This record dates back into the mid-1800s, and so we're on the warmer end of this roughly 200, little less than 200-year record. What's behind the current warm period that we're seeing just this year? What's causing these record temperatures that we've seen? Because we have seen a lot of places, particular places, that keep daily temperature records. So towns, counties, cities, and countries saw record temperatures over the last couple weeks with the insanely strong heat dome down south in the U.S. It kind of crept up along the East Coast a little bit. Led to a lot of temperature records being set in the U.S. That's a fact. That's not an estimation. That's an observation. That's a fact because there's particular stations that recorded those observations, recorded those temperatures. So a bunch of places broke their temperature record for as long as they've been keeping that record for, as long as they have the instruments to do that. What's behind that, and why is the planet seemingly warmer than last year right now, at least in terms of global average temperature? Well, there's three primary factors that are contributing to what we're seeing just this past week. Number one is a strengthening El Nino, which is already tied to warmer global temperatures. Right, we've covered this before. El Nino leads to a warmer Pacific Ocean, and those warmer Pacific waters are going to stay at the surface as part of this El Nino, and that's going to contribute to additional heating. Warm water on the surface is going to evaporate and condensate, and it's going to go into the atmosphere, which is going to warm things up. This is a natural phenomenon that happens every 2 to 7 years. This is natural. El Nino is going to lead to warmer than average temperatures for the next couple years that it's in effect, and it's strengthening right now too. So it's going to seem more extensive than it typically is. Additionally, the Atlantic Ocean has seen significantly warmer than average temperatures thus far this year. This is also mostly a natural phenomenon. It's believed to be tied to El Nino to a degree. Furthermore, the Atlantic has been in a warm circulatory period for the last couple decades. So the Atlantic is a lot warmer than it has been in recent years. And thirdly, this one's very specific, and the University of Maine's Climate Reanalyzer actually mentioned this as well on their website when talking about the recent temperature anomalies that they're estimating. Weather patterns in the southern hemisphere in recent days have brought warmer than usual air masses further south into the Antarctic region. Now, the Antarctic region is typically among the coldest on the planet year-round. So if you're bringing in these warmer air masses, it's going to skew data a little bit for the time that those air masses are there until they move out of the area. It's going to offset the typically coldest part of the planet, which is going to result in a slightly increased global mean temperatures. Of course, all this is on top of just a warming planet in general for various natural and human-induced reasons. And all this is contributing to the quote-unquote record estimated global average temperatures that we've seen this last week. Hopefully this provides some context surrounding many of these headlines that you've seen regarding the record global warming in terms of average temperatures. And hopefully will allow for you to realize not all things are as they seem. Take things with a grain of salt, do research, and figure out what's actually going on before looking at these various headlines. And always know there's always more than what they're letting on, especially in regards to the climate. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed the content or commentary, please consider leaving a rating so others can also find this podcast. Enjoy your week and keep your eyes on the skies.